Hi, I'm Jeff Nyquist, and this is another edition of Friends and Enemies. With me is my co host, Alex Benesch. He's in Germany, I'm in the United States, and today we're going to talk about a number of topics in the news. One topic that interests me, credit goes to Nevin Gusak, who has been engaging with these MAGA communists to see what they're like. And one of them, John Jackman, posted earlier this month, a little more than a week ago. He posted a picture of Putin and Xi Jinping, the dictator of China, and he gave the following quote: "The dissolution of the Soviet Union and opening up of China was not the defeat of communism. In fact, it set the stage for the ultimate triumph of communism and the total defeat of capitalism." Unquote. That is a fascinating quote because he's basically saying that the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the Chinese opening up was a kind of operation by the communists to advance communism. And of course, these MAGA communists, they support MAGA. They say that in terms of their attitude towards Trump is you go to McDonald's for the burger, not for the clown. And they regard Trump as a clown. But the reason they're for MAGA is they say that MAGA represents the working class movement that's ultimately going to overthrow the globalist capitalist elite. So this is pretty interesting, this MAGA communism. And it's this melding of communist ideas with the right, which we've seen more and more different shades of this, different formulas for this on the right. So, Alex, what do you make of these MAGA communists?
Well, I seen the report on these guys and their that sub movement, right? I seen the report by Trevor Loudon, and
Hmm.
it's I mean sometimes even I get a little bit surprised, by how silly it gets, and I remember some tweets, some posts on X where these people or people like this, they post images of Lenin, and it's like he's their cult leader, and they have this deep rooted sense of being part of something special, something that started a long time ago, but the victory is close at hand, and they will be part of that final victory. They're not just an in-between stage in a longer history, but they will be physically there, because these guys are young, right? They will be physically there when the big victory happens, right? And it's like hijacking this MAGA movement, and like, yeah, I mean, there's struggling people in America. The left will always try to use that, but if you claim to like, kind of this movement, kind of this MAGA movement, if you talk in a certain way, some of these people in the movement, they will not immediately reject you, even though it's baffling to the mind how people can say these things and still have an audience among the right. I mean,
Hmm.
these guys seem nuts, but there's a method to the madness. There's
Oh,
somebody developed this and recruited these young people, or told these young people that this is the way to go. They didn't
well,
invent this.
these guys were working for the Bernie movement,
Oh,
4 or 5 years ago. They were working for Bernie Sanders. The two most
oh, and they
prominent
got some.
spokesmen.
So you mean
Yeah,
they got a bit frustrated by the classic way of doing things, and now they
I
really want to
don't.
do it?
Well, they were really young. I mean, the two most prominent spokesmen for MAGA communism are Jackson Hinkle and Haz al-Din. And I think Jackson Hinkle is 24. Maybe it was an older article. He might be 25. And Haz al-Din is 27, 28. And I don't know how old Jackman is, but he's pretty young. These guys are very young. And of course, what's amazing, though, what is unaccountable about them in terms of the sophistication of the push behind them is that they've been invited uh, by Tucker Carlson
Hmm.
as a guest on his show.
Oh, of course.
They are now, of course, they're pro Putin and pro Beijing, but Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, has praised them. They have, of course, they went to Moscow and they met Alexander Dugin. Of course, they met him in Moscow, so they're
Oh
part of
boy.
that
Oh boy.
thing.
Oh boy.
Alexander
Oh boy.
Dugin. That was earlier this year, and of course they like I said they're not interested in climate change or social justice or transgenderism. They call those liberal distractions. When what we know what they are is these are communist sabotage operations. But it's curious that Hinkle and Eldin have gotten so much publicity. I mean, they were on Jimmy Dore, and in which the admission was made that they are intentionally provocative. And I mean, to support Kim Jong Un and
Wow.
Putin the president of China all at the same time, and to claim they support MAGA and they support Trump, although they call Trump a clown and he's just a mascot. This is what they say, is rather remarkable. And I think that there is you go back to Lyndon LaRouche, who taught Marxism Leninism in the 1960s, and then together with the KGB in 1971, with help from the KGB, formed the U.S. Labor Party, which was a right-wing Marxist
Hmm.
Leninist party, right? Back in 71. Now that was an experiment. It was one of the first experiments in the U.S. Well, I sometimes suspect the John Birch Society is one of these experiments, although most Birchers don't know anything about it, because it all depends on Robert Welch's history with
Yeah.
his anti-Semitic conspiracy theory and being the head of being associated with pro-Axis groups, which means that if Robert Welch was a spy for the Axis in World War, or an agent of influence for the Axis in World War II, which some FBI documents there's kind of the
Hmm.
suggestion
Hmm.
there, from that period from 1943. Uh, did the Soviets capture German spy
Right.
files to find out who
Right.
their spies in America were? And did they then flip those spies into being theirs?
And
That's
you
a
explain
question I
that
ask.
you explain that so well in that two episode, or that multi episode we did on the conspiracy movement, when you said that you always wondered why are there such similarities between these Birch Society conspiracy books, which were huge. They sold millions of copies. And why was there so much similarity between Leninism? Because it was always about the corporations. All these corporations are bad, or most of these corporations are bad, and they're all meeting in with the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations, and this is the Illuminati, and we have to break them. And it's just like what the left is saying. I mean, of course there's bad corporations. Of course there's some serious molds in certain corporations, but sort of this blanket program that came out of this, or that was represented by these Birch books. I mean, I totally agree with you on that. The similarities are way too
Yeah.
thick with Leninism and this blanket rejection of American capitalism itself. And then we did a show. On what actually happened in the starting in the 1870s, when the big industrialization drive in America happened, right? And so, yeah,
Mhm.
you had the trusts. Yeah, things were getting bigger and bigger, and smaller players couldn't necessarily compete. But at the same time, this transformed the United States, this transformed the population, and it made it possible for America to outproduce everybody else in World War II, for example.
Well,
So,
small business has always been huge in America, and,
yeah.
and it's taken a major hit with the pandemic. But there's so many private companies, and
Yeah, but
uh,
not necessarily anybody can have a larger steel company. Not everybody can have a
right. I mean,
larger oil
certain
company.
certain industries are of scale and require thousands and thousands of employees. But it's about this similarity between the Birch Society conspiracy theory, what Alex Jones says, and it's all very vague. Is that the globalist elite that they're opposed to is really the capitalist elite that communism is
Yeah.
opposed to. It's corporations, it's big business.
Anything
They're
since
always
the
bad.
1870s. Everything since the 1870s is painted as part of this Jewish conspiracy, Illuminati conspiracy. So
Well, yeah.
instead of admitting the achievements of that era, you may disagree with some of these individual guys, and of course some of these individual families got incredibly wealthy, but they worked themselves to death almost. They oftentimes were not happy people sitting at the pool half the time. They were grinding all the time just to make companies profitable and actually make quality cheap steel available. So that made the next industry possible, which was the car industry. So there's a lot of achievement, and there's also a lot of Americans that were part of this achievement in the 1870s and then the 1880s, the 90s. Then in early next century, so this was a kind of a part of history that was important for America, for capitalism, very important for the population. There's a lot of achievement in this, but to blanket declare this whole thing a conspiracy, this unites the left, the traditional Leninist left, and this also unites the many traditional conspiracy ideologues,
And
the
it mixes
truthers.
populism in with it.
Yeah.
You go back to William Jennings Bryan, Cross of Gold, crucified on a cross of gold speech back in the 1890s. This kind of populism where they were complaining about the gold standard in the 1890s, and now they want it back. There's no consistent understanding of things, except that there's this general complaint that rich people control everything and they're against us, and it's hurting us. The thing is that America's done pretty darn good over the last 150 years. But what's really dangerous now is that the massive education program of the Birch Society, by spreading these conspiracy theories, have paved the way for MAGA communism, because the language of basically opposing the rich, which is also the language of communism, and Marx and Lenin in the Communist Manifesto, is perilously close to the language of some of these MAGA conspiracy theorists, and of course perilously close to the MAGA, what the Birch Society has taught people. So you have this large number of people who have been only half educated and don't really understand a lot of the sociology involved in the way things have evolved in modern society, and so they can fall for these false explanations that bring them into alignment with mass movements to overthrow the system.
And it's like the exclusion of many possible solutions to existing problems. How can we make something better? How can we fix something? How about we bring manufacturing back home to the US? How about we don't buy products made by Chinese slaves? There's all kinds of ideas that you can implement, or to have a better level playing field, for companies and corporations, because some of these companies, they don't really want to be American anymore, because they want to be offshore, they want to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So there are many ideas and solutions to make things better for most people or everybody, but these MAGA communist types, they're saying none of this would ever work. You can't have this solution and that approach and that approach. We'll just exclude that. We'll just eliminate that from our thinking. The only way of fixing this is a complete destruction of the system, is a complete overthrow, and then implementing a communism managed by whom exactly? I mean, where do you draw, because that's what our show is called, where do you draw the line to define who's an enemy and who's a friend? So blanket calling everybody who's within the system, blanket calling these people with influence enemies, that's just as dumb as declaring all these people over there, they're all our friends for now because they agree with us. But as we know in communism, when there's disagreement, these communists will turn on each other and they will eliminate their own people for the smallest of reasons sometimes. So it's like is it? I mean, how much money do these people make? This Hazaldin and this other guy. I mean, is it the money for them? Is it the fame of being recognized by people when you've been on Tucker, or what is it? Are these true believers? You think? Are they really true believers?
Well, they were really, I mean, these are people who are really active, supporting socialism and the left. So I think it has to be that they are sincere, except that what is their training? What is their intellectual, what is their reading? Have they come to this on their own? Where is their support coming from? Why were they able to get so many people like Carlson? I mean, people like Jimmy Dore and Carlson. I mean, we know there's some problems with Carlson. We can kind of guess why Carlson might want to interview them, given what he's done in the past. But some of these other people, and to have articles written about you in the Guardian. I mean, the Guardian's never paid any attention to you or me or any other people who are attempting to comment on current events. Why these people? Why are these
Yeah.
people given star status? Why are they trending on the internet? Somebody is promoting them, somebody with money and power. I would guess that it's the communist movement. People on the left, like this professor in Portland that The Guardian is quoting, I think his name is Reed. One of the things he said is he wants to claim that, he's kind of implying that there's some kind of right-wing attempt to take over the left by appropriating leftist language. Well,
It's the other way
why
around.
doesn't he read it the other way around? Why
Yeah.
isn't the left trying to appropriate the right, trying to subvert the right by appropriating right-wing language and adding it to communism? That's more likely because those are the kind of games the left plays. The right really doesn't play those games, or at least not very well if they do. And of course, it's to not acknowledge that the CIA has been infiltrated and is being run by management appointed by Obama and by Biden lackeys, people who really are more likely to be pro-communist than to have some kind of pro-American agenda. And you've got something interesting there about the CIA, don't you? About the things CIA is doing to try
Yeah.
to bulletproof themselves from a Trump administration.
Exactly. Now you've talked about this several times on this program. This diversity drive that's been going on for a while, and it's escalating, but also the backlash is also increasing. Luckily, we'll see how that battle plays out. Now, so you told the story how your original plan was to join the CIA and to do a proper job, to do counterintelligence, to spy on the Russians and find their moles on American soil. This was kind of the plan, but they said, nah, we want to hire a more diverse crowd. We want to change the CIA. We don't want these.
They told me they weren't going to hire any white males.
Exactly.
That's what
Now,
they
of course,
said. We're not going to even interview you because you're white and you're male.
Now, of course, if you want to be the CIA, if you want to be the central intelligence agency, of course you gotta shake it up a little bit. You need some people, especially as spies against foreign countries. You need some people that look this way, that way, or the other. You also need a specific number of women for espionage. That's fairly understood. But to then exclude highly qualified people in favor of a diverse crowd, as if we're talking about a regional county governments or something like it's like a regional
Reagan
little thing.
was president, and this is in 1987. Reagan was president. I had a high GPA. I was in graduate school in the third most prestigious graduate school in the United States, at UC Irvine Politics and Society Group. And so why would you not even interview somebody that has that as their background?
Exactly.
Why
And then
would you? Because they're white and they're male, and you not Instead,
Yeah.
I am sure that people who were Marxists, who were women there, because all the women were, I didn't know. Well, I take it back. There's one that wasn't. But the problem is, I think that the CIA, what people don't realize is the CIA in the 60s was liberal. The
Mm.
management was
Mm.
liberal, left of center. And this is what Robert Gates wrote in his autobiography, From the Shadows. Uh, Robert Gates, the former CIA director, in his memoir, he talks about in the 60s, most of the staff going out and joining in anti-war protests when he was a young CIA official.
Yeah.
Um, so he says, well, people think it's a conservative organization. No, it's not. And so it's the organization that the head of the CIA, William Colby, basically outed
Mm. Mm.
James Angleton
Yeah.
as being involved in an FBI mail opening scheme, opening the mail of people writing letters back and forth between the Soviet Union, which was technically illegal. He
Mm.
used that to remove Angleton and to basically destroy the brain of the CIA, the counterintelligence
Yeah,
staff.
and destroy the memory, and not just speaking in they literally meant to destroy a big part of the CIA's memory by just shredding the counterintelligence department and getting rid of more people than just James
Well,
Angleton.
destroying their files, their reports, their books,
exactly.
Putting things away that no one would ever see again,
And not
whether
train,
they destroyed all of it.
and
Yeah.
not use that material and not use these veterans to train the next generation of intelligence officers. So
And
it's like
instead, to train the next generation of intelligence officers that all that was sick think.
yeah, yeah. But
The idea that
then
we
you saw,
could be penetrated is sick
yeah.
think.
But then you saw some of the new people getting hired at the CIA, and they became frustrated within a few years. It's like they started to complain. They could make more money in the business world, and they didn't like the conditions. And it's like in the intelligence game, you need to be patient. Intelligence
You need to be
is not,
dedicated to a
yeah,
cause. It's
exactly.
not about making money.
And
You're
it's like it's
protecting your
long term,
country.
and it's a long term way of thinking. This is not what this diversity crowd is all about. They're all about doing things for the sake of doing things now, and just everything is driven by ideology, and they don't have necessarily the stamina to do this for 20 years or 30 years, to do this for the rest of your life, and also to take what was achieved by the last generation of officers and then bring that into your work life, and then just to train the next generation. So it's like passing the stuff on from generation to generation.
Yeah.
This is not what these people were about, and many of them, these new people getting hired, they quit a few years after, which is terrible because, think about it. You recruit them, you train them, all that costs money, they gain insight into the agency, and then they just drop out. We talked about this one guy, I forgot his name. He was at the CIA for a couple of years, and then he left, and he became this awful propagandist, and right before the Ukrainian war, he came out in major publications saying, well, if there is an attack against Ukraine, it wouldn't be so bad because NATO is evil and these right-wingers in America are evil. And then he went into this whole bit saying that he was lied to his whole life, regarding security and country, and we're the good
Who
guys.
is this?
I have it in my last book. I forgot the name, but I talked about this on the show.
This is familiar.
And he said that they lied to me. They showed me this. They taught me this patriotic stuff, but it was all a lie. And then I read this KGB guy, and it opened my eyes. He said, and then I started to like Russia, and even the past of Russia, the Soviet era. He explains all that he started to respect the KGB and he liked the Soviet Union. This is exactly what happens if you hire these people. And suddenly they just completely pervert the whole purpose of this agency.
There are some people who, by character and nature, should not be intelligence officers or officials. But you had some information about how the CIA
Exactly.
really is afraid of MAGA, afraid of Trump,
So
and they're
it's
afraid they're going
escalating.
to have people replaced
Yeah.
and
So
new
it's
people come in.
completely escalating now. So it's it's the newly revised diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility DEI strategy for the CIA. They want to put diversity at the center of promotion decisions and attempt to solidify programs to withstand changing administrations, according to internal documents and a public presentation by a senior agency diversity official. Now, this is where it gets really dangerous because, I mean, the CIA has gone through many changes over the years, as you would expect, but they want to make this stuff permanent. We see it as the core of our mission, CIA's Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, Jerry Laurienti, said of DEI in a presentation earlier this year. And it says Fred Fleitz, a former CIA agent, the national security official in the Trump administration, told Just the News that DEI initiatives are dug in quite deep at the agency and warns they are detrimental to the execution of the mission. So they're saying so there was a video leaked and the content matches with published CIA documents and the meeting minutes from the presentation. Right now, we already have required training for leaders at different levels, Laurenti said. Also, when you go into a promotion panel for leadership, and particularly for the senior leadership, those panels include our head of talent and then the head of each directorate and then myself. So,
see, once you take over human resources, you've got the organization. And this is where, we were just talking about Jackson Hinkle and Haz el-Din, these American communists. Yeah, they've got something, the Midwestern Marxist, I think, is one of their groups. These people are kind of, they're out there, they're getting all this publicity, but the people that are really important that you won't hear about are the Marxists that are in the CIA management, the Marxists that are in the FBI or the Justice Department management. And the fact that they want to make it so that no president, no election can come in and say, look, we got Marxists in here, the president's going to clean them out because the American people want them to be cleaned out. This whole arrangement. So what are they doing to bulletproof themselves? How do you know? Does it say in that article?
Yeah, it's they describe it according to these presentation slides and how it matches up with the other materials that they've gathered. They said that they want programs that endure despite changes in leadership at the White House, not be easily shaken or crumbled due to executive administration changes. So the strategy highlights the importance of cementing DEI criteria in hiring and promotion panels, corporate communications, and training courses. Now, this is, if you read between the lines, that means you can be punished internally or reprimanded for using the wrong language, for anything that has nothing to do with the job itself. So you're good or even a great intelligence officer, but you're not fulfilling all the stuff that they require, this DEI stuff. So then they can give you a bad review or a mediocre review. This is how they can dig in deep into the agency. When it's
and they can also use it to purge conservatives. These methods. If a conservative doesn't like to promote homosexuality, he might be provoked in a way that he says, well, I don't really believe in that. And then, you just offended them. You're out.
Yeah. And they can always claim that a violation of DEI policies is a violation of work policies because, if there's so many diverse people now at the CIA, if you don't treat them exactly how we instruct you to treat them, that can create mistrust.
Use the right pronouns.
Yeah, because
which I could never get. I could never, I would just automatically say he or she or whatever, wouldn't call a person them.
So the superiors,
that's not even grammatically sensible.
So the superiors can claim that your failure of abiding by all these DEI policies actually creates a sense of distrust, and that this can harm missions. So this is where they make that artificial link between this DEI nonsense and the actual intelligence work, because now you're offending people. Now you're creating distrust in a.
But how do they prevent Trump from getting rid of them?
It says,
how can they stop him from just coming in and saying they violated their oath of allegiance to the Constitution, and I'm getting rid of them because these things they promote are opposed to our Constitution?
They say this. It says here. It says this here. Earlier this year, before the presentation, the broader intelligence community came under scrutiny for focus on DEI after an internal newsletter featuring a cross-dressing agent also highlighted several progressive topics like gender identity and a focus on problematic or offensive language. The featured agent wrote that cross-dressing improved his skills at understanding clandestine assets and overcoming his own identity-based biases and mindsets. I am an intelligence officer, and I'm a man who likes to wear women's clothes sometimes, the agent wrote. I think my experiences as someone who cross-dresses have sharpened the skills I use as an intelligence officer, particularly critical thinking and perspective taking, unquote. But here's the kicker. Now, in the past, intelligence agencies, they were, especially the British ones, they were very careful in when they found out that one of their intelligence officers was gay, or they wouldn't hire gay people. And this was not just some baloney ideological thing, as is always claimed, but this had a very specific reason, because where is the ultimate loyalty? You know, where do you have a sense of loyalty to the country and to security, or is your loyalty towards your ideology stronger, right? Because you cannot have a functioning intelligence agency if you can't trust these people around you, if they have split loyalties. You know, how much do they really rank their LGBTQ crowd and their convictions? Does this rank higher for them? Is this more important to them?
Well, that is their cause, right?
Exactly. So that means
cause, not America.
So that means, I think, the embedding that they're trying to do, this deep-seated embedding, is not just on paper. It's not just legal things they want to implement to safeguard against new administrations, but it may also be clandestine things, some off-the-book things that the new White House is not even supposed to see. Because then you can survive purges by a new administration. And we saw that coming with Project 2025. Now, I read Project 2025, and it's a lot about it is just trying to counter this massive infiltration and this nonsense and this weakening of America's defenses. And so, of course, when the Heritage Foundation is putting out Project 2025, and usually the Heritage Foundation gets about 60% of their ideas on the way. This is nothing really new. This is nothing really out of the ordinary. But then, of course, these left-wing people and their handlers, they're thinking, okay, they may be coming after us. They maybe try to do a purge and get rid of these ideological people, right? That value ideology much higher than anything else. And so this is how I think they want to truly embed this. They want to do things off the book, or just use kind of they want to use maybe circles and these contacts that are just very unique to this LGBTQ community. If you haven't been social with these people, if you haven't gone to the same clubs, if you haven't spent intimate time with people like this, they don't trust you. Because you're not one of them, right? But if you are one of them, or maybe there's people at the agency right now that act absolutely regular, right? They don't wear that LGBTQ stuff on their sleeves. They pretend to be like your standard intelligence officer, right? But they may have this secret alliance to this LGBTQ super left-wing cause. So this is kind of a nightmare scenario, I believe, because you have people inside of the agency, and it becomes almost, maybe at some point in the future, becomes almost impossible to find all these infiltrators. So what you then have to do is you close down the CIA and you start from scratch with the people you actually trust, because they've been around a long time and they've been for generations. For generations, you could trust them, and then you have to start over. So this is, I think, how they want to truly make this.
This is what MAGA is going to do. You think what the president will do if he gets into power? If President Trump gets into power.
It's the Heritage Foundation certainly has written about getting rid of that nonsense in Project 2025. Now, of course, they don't tell you exactly how they're going to do it in the Project 2025 document, because you don't want to show your cards, right? And I think it's the same thing with the sources of this news report when they say, okay, we have a video presentation, we have some PowerPoint slides, we have some other matching documents about, this diversity stuff, and they declare their intention to make this, future-proof, this DEI stuff, whoever's in the White House, this is supposed to survive. These people also don't declare.
Whatever the White House does to promote hiring conservatives, they just fire them because they're not DEI.
Well, some of this DEI stuff, they don't show their cards either. They don't tell you exactly how they're gonna do this in the long run. It has
a subjectivistic kind of flavor to it, because it's in the eye of the beholder, right? What is an offense? When am I offended? When have you crossed a line? It's sort of in the eye of the beholder.
And I mean, if some LGBTQ person, uses the wrong pronouns for another LGBTQ person, that first LGBTQ person is not going to care. He's like saying, oh, by the way, you just, my pronouns are this, that, and the other. Oh, okay, sure. But if a conservative intelligence officer uses the wrong pronouns, then you can take it to HR or the internal affairs.
It's an assault on them then.
Exactly. Then it's a thing. Then, of course, it's a thing. And so I think
what they're really offended at is the different belief system of a more traditional conservative person. That's where the tolerance of one group becomes the right to persecute another group. Where they claim they're being tolerant, now the persecution goes on Christians and people with traditional values. That's really frightening.
And also
this
remember,
is the basis of this new totalitarianism they're trying to put over on us.
And also, if people remember, look at some of the worst moles ever in American intelligence history, at the CIA, the FBI, some other places. I mean, most of these guys, they paraded themselves, or they presented themselves as your regular type intelligence officer, right? So this is something that I think is going to be used to make this future-proof, because even if there's a purge, some of these people, LGBTQ warriors in key positions at the CIA, they will remain at the CIA because they're not known as LGBTQ fanatics at the CIA. So they have the overt guys at the CIA, like this newsletter guy, who draws the attention to himself and says, I'm an intelligence officer, I cross-dress, and this helps me with my job, blah, blah, blah. He gets all this attention, but they also have these covert guys around who can survive a purge of the CIA because nobody knows really what they're about. And this is sort of the...
I mean, so if somebody said, look, I believe that there are men and women, and that men should dress as men and women as women, and that the mixing of it up is kind of something that should be kept out of work, should be kept out of any professional environment, and then you get fired, you're insensitive, out of here, you're out of here, your views are not... When just about everybody in the United States 40, 50 years ago, 30 years ago, would have been all right saying that. Now they're Nazis for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, do you really want to be an intelligence officer? What does it even mean to you to be an intelligence officer? I mean, back in the day, there was like these high stakes of actually making it into the selection progress, and then actually making the cut, and just becoming an intelligence officer and then being able to improve your skills over the years. I mean, they would look at your personality and then make the decision, do we want to go battle the Soviets with this person next to us? Do we want this person right next to us by our side in this battle, this intelligence battle against the Soviet Union? Will they help us win? Do we like these people? Do we trust these people?
Well, but now wonder about the judgment of somebody or their emotional state or their mental state. When you hear somebody saying, I enjoy dressing as the opposite sex, or that they think they're a man trapped in a woman's body or a woman trapped in a man's body, you begin to have concerns about their mental stability.
Yeah, it's like when you're battling, let's say, the Soviet Union or the later iteration of Russia, when you're going against these people, you're going against some hyper masculine, psychopathic guys. Really, you're just it's something, you know. It's a very significant adversary, and so you're wondering about your clarity and your focus, because this is battle, you know. This is hard stakes, and there are so many other jobs you can have where you can try to, especially when it's your own company or your company of somebody else, you can try all the woke stuff. I mean, but you can't force people to, you know, buy your products, and you just have to make it work. It's legal to, you know, make a newsletter and say, cross-dressing's greatest thing ever, blah blah blah. But you know, don't expect the government to fund this, and don't expect the government to give you that specific role and that specific power.
When 42% of transgenders in the United States have attempted suicide or have actually committed it, you know there's a problem there. And it isn't that, you know, they want to say that these people are attempting suicide because society doesn't accept them. I don't think that's true when you find out that people who have transitioned have a very high suicide rate. People who have actually, now they are officially a woman or a man, and that because if you're not comfortable in your own skin, if you're not actually able to be who you are biologically, because biologically it's given in 99.999%, you know, I don't know, there are some hermaphrodites that are biologically born, extremely rare, but if you're given sex as that's what it is, you're looking at an adjustment problem in that's in the mind. And of course there are unstable people. There are people that what if I decide that I'm a petunia? You have to water me every day, and you have you're not watering me every day. You're offending me now. I mean, how far do you take this? It's completely ridiculous. Society functioned perfectly well without this. We all have to put up with disappointments in life.
It's like the ultimate. I mean, the ultimate sense of responsibility, in the sense of what you regard authority as. You know, what do you think about authority in principle? You know, when it's direct authority, it's the person in charge, and then there's the White House. You may not like this particular president, but this is the way the system has been built, and this is what the people voted for, and it's a bigger party anyway. Because at some point, I mean, if you see that somebody has a problem with authority in general, even if your ultimate authority or the ultimate authority above you is the will of the people, is political representation, you know, by the people, for the people, and this is the ultimate authority. But if you grew up in this environment of everybody's hostile because everybody's not accepting me, and I feel isolated, I feel unhappy, and nothing, the system doesn't work, and blah blah blah. So it's like you have a problem with authority. I mean, there's bad authority, but there's also some kind of an authority that, or a concept of authority that truly works. And so then we got this here. This was a recent story in Wired magazine about the CIA and what they tried, what the CIA tried in Venezuela, right? And this was during the Trump administration, mind everybody. So this was not this doesn't come later. So here we got the CIA conducting operations against the fake government of Venezuela, especially President Nicolas Maduro. And so the former bus driver turned autocrat had ruled Venezuela for 5 years, faked some elections, but and then he got some serious pushback, and the CIA they wanted to change. The CIA actually wanted to change this mess, and Maduro started to complain about not just opposition in general that he faced, but also foreign operations. Maduro said at the United Nations his country was the victim of a permanent aggression by the Imperial United States, and he claimed that a recent attempt on his life had been masterminded by shadowy actors from within the United States. The Trump administration officials publicly denied any role in the drone attack that he was referring to, and a dissident member of the Venezuelan army later claimed responsibility. So not everything Maduro says has to be taken seriously, of course, when he talks about that. But it says here the CIA-led initiative, alongside the Trump administration's wider efforts to get rid of Maduro, would fall well short of its ultimate goal. The question now is why? It's like, because we just talked about this, right? You got the wokies now at the CIA, and then they get this task of helping change in Venezuela, and then you get the moles, you get the moles, you get the insiders who may be sabotaging a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then they pass on informations, and maybe this is why the CIA ultimately fell short of that goal in Venezuela, because it was against the leftist government, right? Mm-hmm. And so,
yeah, the fact that someone like General Laura Richardson of Southern Command can publicly come out, a 4-star general can come out and say, look, China and Russia are moving into Latin America. They're taking over all these countries in the hemisphere. The United States is doing nothing. She's trying to raise an alarm. But what has the Biden administration done to try to prevent this takeover from happening? They're literally forming a communist bloc south of the Rio Grande. I've learned, I don't know if I mentioned it here, but that the Mexican government has, according to stories I've heard, has told the Chinese, look, we're with you in destroying America. We're on your side, the Mexican government. So how many of these governments will side with China and Russia against us when push comes to shove in the future? Yeah. And of course, it all depends on whether or not China and Russia remain stable, whether the U.S. remains stable in this period of unrestricted warfare and, of course, open warfare and sabotage. So it's a very dangerous situation to be in, and we've allowed this from a position of strength that we had when the Soviet Union dissolved to now.
Yeah,
this total erosion.
Like we talked about this before. This kind of this reputation, or this distorted reputation that was built up by various influencers. This reputation of the CIA being behind everything, and they can do everything at all places simultaneously in the world, and everything. Every time something important happens, it's always the CIA. But here's a reality check. Now, this is from Wired magazine, and they say they got this from sources, serious intelligence sources, and it's the first time they ever told the story. Blah blah blah. Of course, I think Wired magazine is more to the left, or more central left or something. But it says this before before the Trump administration's directive, Venezuela was a low priority at Langley, and capabilities had to be built from the ground up, according to the administration and former CIA officials. One of the task force's first goals and expansion of efforts to hack Venezuelan government networks and so on. But there were roadblocks everywhere. Magically, these roadblocks.
The biggest oil-producing country in Latin America is Venezuela, and that's the importance they ascribe to it, is they just neglect it.
Yeah.
Just,
and it's like,
the communists have taken it over. They're trying to push communism into adjoining countries. Oh, big deal. We'll just ignore them.
Yeah, and the Trump admin,
irresponsible.
I mean, the Democrats were sitting on their butts for a long time. The Democrats were not really doing something against this stuff happening in Venezuela. The Democrats were pretty passive, and then comes the Trump admin, which was not just Trump himself; it was the big team. And the Trump admin said, we need to make this a higher priority. We need to get a task force, because they basically got word that nothing was really prepared for Venezuela. The capabilities were not really there. So here comes a new initiative. They give out the order, we need a new task force, we need to get serious about Venezuela, and then one roadblock after the other. Oh, we can't get access to, this, and there's a problem, and there's a problem, and there's a bazillion problems, right? And it's like, if people actively sabotage operations in the intelligence community, that makes then the White House look bad, because then the White House cannot have these success stories at some point in the public view. Let's assume for a moment that this had worked out just fine. Trump admin comes in, starts this Venezuelan task force. It's actually successful. Maduro is gone, and there's massive change in Venezuela, and it becomes a more Venezuela becomes a more pro-Western, pro-American country, and it's a different approach to business and everything else. I mean, this would have been a massive success, and of course, the Trump admin could have then publicly, claimed that success and patted themselves each other on the back, and the voters would be happy about that. They would say they actually caused significant change in some other part of the world.
Well, not the left-wing voters, but I'll share this with people. There's a former CIA official that worked in Colombia for many years that I know, and of course, his testimony was that there were officials just above him was undermining Plan Colombia under George W. Bush, and that the CIA was not able to fight communism effectively because administrators within the CIA were undermining the opposition to communism. And that was, almost 20 years ago, 16 years ago. And of course, you go back to Iran-Contra, and what was going on there with the allegations against Felix Rodriguez that were made by Terry Reid, that Felix Rodriguez is a double agent working for the KGB. Felix Rodriguez was a CIA official who ran the Contra supply operation for President Reagan's administration in the what they called the Contra War. It was the war in Nicaragua to try to stop the Sandinistas from holding power there. Sandinistas are communists, by the way, for those that don't know. And of course, Daniel Ortega and the Sandinistas control Nicaragua today. It's a communist dictatorship. The Russians are in there building military infrastructure for them. They're aligned with Cuba and Venezuela. And of course, all these regions, there's a Colombian friend that I talk to from time to time who's very well informed on events in Colombia. He says Colombia is just being infiltrated, just being slowly taken apart. Here they have fought this long-running civil war against the FARC, which they suddenly made an agreement to try to have a peace thing. Never make peace with the communists, by the way, they'll cheat you. And so now that they're not actively fighting them, they're just being even more subverted by them. Of course, there's a question of whether or not Colombia's presidents themselves are not, in some sense, enemy agents, just like many of the the many of the political organizations in democratic countries get infiltrated, and the political parties get taken over. And then what are you? Who are you electing? You know,
Yeah.
what was our choice when we had John McCain running against Barack Obama in 2008? John McCain had been a prisoner of war in a communist prison camp for
Mm.
several years. What did they do to him when he was in there? There were stories about him. I interviewed some people in there with him. He was thought by his fellow prisoners to have collaborated with the communists. That would be powerful blackmail to hold over an American senator's head. And then you have him running against Barry, what one Hawaiian called Homo Barry, but
Sotoro something or the
Barry
other.
Soetoro, aka Barack Obama, who became president, who was mentored by a Communist Party member, Frank Marshall Davis. You can't make this stuff up. The infiltration of our political parties and the subversion of our leaders
Mm.
is a serious question. I mean, John McCain, I think, was struggling to be independent of the what happened to him in that prison in Vietnam. I think that, but I'm not sure of McCain's freedom
Mm.
as a
Mm.
person, as a politician, given the potential blackmail against him. And I have it on record. I have the tapes of the interviews that I
Mm.
did with people he was in prison with. I have them to this day. And I could play them anytime for anybody, but the stories they told will send a chill up your spine.
Oh
They were
no.
definitely
Yeah,
against McCain being president.
and
Yeah.
those cultivating potentially cultivating people like that and then building them up, that is a serious intelligence operation. And now people assume that everything the CIA does is serious intelligence, super spying, black ops stuff that like you see in the movies. But a lot of what the CIA did is a lot of CIA work, especially under the Democrats, is fairly lame. And this is reflected in that
Oh,
story
yes.
in Wired. They say instead of conducting tough operations and daring operations, it was sort of decided somewhere in the CIA that they were going to do these lame operations that really don't do anything. And all this,
Yeah.
I quote here,
Bureaucratically safe
yeah,
operations that you can claim you're doing something on paper.
all this led some administration officials, meaning Trump officials, to believe that the CIA was focusing on the democracy promotion efforts to wriggle out of conducting more hard-edged covert operations. It was their excuse for not doing other things, says a former U.S. official. I felt like they were playing with us. And then there's a quote: "The CIA is not the Mossad. It's hunkered down, bureaucratic, and not daring. I'd like to see an intelligence community that's more capable of carrying out clandestine operations in support of American policy," Bolton tells Wired magazine. Bolton declined to comment on any specific agency activities or discussions within the Trump administration about Venezuela-related covert operations. But that quote in and of itself says a lot, right? I mean, of course he's not going to give away any details because he's a professional, but I mean, that says a lot. That quote says a lot, really.
Mm-hmm.
Or it says the most important thing here.
Yeah, the problem with people, making the CIA into this omnicompetent villain is that first, they're not omnicompetent. And as far as the villainy goes, most of it is just they're accusing the CIA of doing things that the KGB did. And, the CIA, the spying is a dirty business. Of course, the CIA does dirty things. All intelligence agencies do, but your country has to have one, and hopefully one that functions. But ours does not function. It is a bit of a joke, and people don't realize that. As competent as Mossad is, I don't know if you saw the recent interview with a expert historian in intelligence history that was on one of the podcasts, and he was asked what was the most competent, powerful intelligence service in recent history, and he said, "Oh, it was the Russians."
Yeah.
The Russians have been the most incompetent. I'm sorry, the most competent people at intelligence work over the last probably 2 centuries, maybe a century and a half at least, but probably 2 centuries.
Yeah.
They have excelled everyone else, and it's cultural, It's part of their culture. It's part of their institutions. They just do very well at that. That's something
Yeah.
they do well.
And I mean,
Like
not every.
Americans do other things
Yeah, I
well.
mean, not every people, because this is why people really need to read books on intelligence, the intelligence history, and how operations are done, because it's not like an operation doesn't necessarily have to seem spectacular, right? It doesn't have to be all about action and movie like stuff. Other operations that seem quiet, they can get spectacular results. So just so people understand this, but you also have to do this daring stuff. You also have to take chances and come up with something spectacular, right? And I read this from, in the last maybe 10 years, I read this from former and active intelligence officer from either the United States or Britain. And they were talking about their job, and they were serious. They really meant what they said, and they said like, yeah, well, it does get kind of boring. And as they said, well, I fly to these countries, these neutral countries, under for the false identity. I get set up, and then we wait in these hotel rooms, and then we move around, and then maybe we get to actually have a meeting with a source. And sometimes this meeting gets delayed 5 times. Sometimes it's aborted and we have to come back in 3 months, or we have to wait 2 weeks to actually get a meeting. And that's just to get things started with the source. And it's like long-winded, and oftentimes it actually leads nowhere. And this is like, we heard some other weird stories in the mainstream press. This was, I think, Reuters news agency. A few years ago, this was a major blow, I think, to American security, when they talked about this failure of some sort communication system used by the CIA. Now, this was regarding operations against China, and this was also about CIA operations against the regime in Iran, right? So they used a communication system that there were actually 2 separate systems. They were supposed to be separate from each other. And the one system was for the situation on the ground. So sources could communicate with their handlers. But then the handlers, they had to use a completely different system to actually talk to their superiors. There was supposed to be this great barrier between the 2 systems. But for some magic reason, there was some digital pixie dust that was flying from this one system to the other system. And that's when the Chinese understood what was going on. And this is when some really good sources for the CIAs in China started disappearing. Now, this is the problem if you have this super woke hiring drive at the CIA. At some point, the CIA becomes unusable. And there's so many examples in this Wired story. It says this. Cuba is, they said Cuba was still cooperating with Venezuela. Cuba relies on oil from Venezuela. In return, U.S. officials believe the Cuban security services have helped protect Maduro, serving as an on-the-ground Praetorian guard for the embattled socialist autocrat. The Trump administration thought if the U.S. could somehow intercept or sabotage the oil ships sailing from Venezuela to Cuba, it could strike a blow against both regimes. So they had these meetings, and they say the CIA had a mobile system that could covertly disable ships. Trump administration officials wanted the agency to move the system near Venezuela to hit some of its fuel tankers. The agency balked. CIA officials explained that it only had one of these systems, that it was currently in another hemisphere, and they didn't want to move it to the northern end of South America. The idea was shelved. So again, this was your your mic is off. Your microphone is off.
Sorry. Do you think that was an honest excuse?
No.
That they just happened to not have it available? I wonder if the top officials at the CIA want to do anything that's effective against a communist country.
Apparently not. So multiple ideas. So they explain more ideas were presented, and every time, oh, there's this problem, we just can't do it, and like,
Whatever
no, we
happened to
just,
where there's a will, there's a way,
yeah,
right? Oh,
yeah,
we got to figure out something. We will do something. No, they do nothing. We're paying them how many billions, and
yeah.
they don't do anything
And
effective
it's not
against
like,
our enemies.
and it's not like it's not like the Obama administration, or it's not like any Democrat administration was super effective against countries in another hemisphere like China or Russia. It's not like they had successes over there, so they didn't have
Well,
resources
turn the CIA
left
on a
for
Libyan
Venezuela.
dictator who's beginning to cooperate with us,
Yeah,
right? So that's
yeah,
what it is. Is we as soon as you change sides, we then undermine you and make sure that there's a revolution in your country. I
yeah.
mean, look at
And I
all the
mean,
countries that were
yeah,
aligned with us that we
and
basically subtly undermined
And
ourselves.
the CIA is not supposed to be a normal employer. This is the same with any other intelligence agency. Now we
Oh
heard
yeah.
we heard this Bolton quote saying that, the CIA is not the Mossad. They're not actually on the ground doing spectacular things most of the time. And it's like when you read about the selection process, the recruitment process for an intelligence agency, it's very rigorous, and it's supposed to be. It's the agency is supposed to drop candidates and not having to explain why, not really having to explain why, like you would see in any other with any other employer, because this is something that even happens at the Mossad, because some people assume that, or even in Israel, some people assume that, well, you have better chances at getting into the Mossad if you are ultra conservative. If you are super orthodox conservative, you have better chances at becoming a Mossad officer, but that's not necessarily the case. And some Mossad people actually explained this. They said, we need intelligence officers to be mentally flexible. If you're too rigid in your thinking, not necessarily a good thing to for an officer in a dynamic environment. So you have to be a bit more flexible. And it's not like and there were people who were somewhat qualified, but the agency thought somebody else was more qualified, and that extends to the personality, the life that this person had before, what this person thinks of authority. This is why an agency needs to be able to select candidates and refuse others, and not have these other people that were refused sue the government, trying to sue their way into the agency because because of some discrimination. They didn't hire me because they're just right wing, mean people, and this is why they didn't hire me. No, there were other reasons they didn't hire you. And if you try to create such a mess for a government agency by trying to sue everybody and talk to the media and be on TikTok talking about everything, this shows why they didn't hire you in the first place. This reaction of you reacting to rejection, this actually shows why your character was not suited for that particular job. If they don't want you, then you do something else and you don't create a big mess. And it's like when the promotion process is influenced by these DEI people, these woke officers. It's almost like the communist equivalent of a religious police in a Muslim country. They're influencing everything. They have their people everywhere, and they give their opinion, and that matters. So okay, this person gets a promotion, but not the other, because this person is more in line with the stuff that we're doing, and we can get rid of anybody for bogus reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the what Wired magazine reported here is the result of that policy. Nothing gets done, and then of course the president doesn't have these successes to present to people, right? They're just making it impossible to actually win something in the world, and so then they think, well, that's maybe influencing the next election too, right?
Yeah, and of course we saw in the whole Trump Russia thing the bias of the intelligence agencies against Mr. Trump.
Yeah, I
We
mean, it's
had
like,
you had the head of the National Security Agency coming to Trump after the election in 2016, saying they were tapping your phones,
hmm,
and they're tapping your phones at the Trump Towers. So you better move. So that's why they moved the transition team out to, I think, a golf
hmm,
course somewhere, to a golf club somewhere, uh, because they were being spied on by the FBI because of these bogus allegations that Trump was working with the Russians.
yeah. And it's like,
And
yeah,
yeah,
it's like now we see right before the election, all these celebrities come out. Also, very, very successful African American celebrities. They all come out and they say, "We're gonna vote Kamala. She's the greatest thing ever. Everybody needs to vote Kamala. This is gonna be so great for everybody in the country." But then we find out that these celebrities, these very same celebrities, they were guests at these infamous Diddy parties, referring to that hip hop artist, entrepreneur, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, he went by different names. And he was notorious for these parties. And many people in the public just assumed he was spending a lot of money. Like in his music videos, he enjoyed luxury champagne and just spending $400,000 on his birthday party, and that's just one party in the year. And it was supposed to be the cool thing to be invited to these parties. But now he's been arrested, and there's 120 lawsuits and more prosecutions and everything, because it is alleged that Mr. Diddy he actually did a lot of illegal things at those parties, and those were filmed. So he had these people
what kind of
videotaped.
illegal things?
Well, the allegations center around drugging people, sexual acts, human trafficking, so extremely serious charges. And this happened over a long time, it is alleged. So, of course, the charges are astronomical in terms of the penalties they carry. And also, the next step would be to have maybe indictments and other lawsuits against these celebrities who are now just endorsing Kamala for whatever reason. And it's a bit like the Epstein thing. It's a bit like this, where everything is videotaped, secretly videotaped, and you wanna control these people, invite them to the parties, and then you got something against them, but there's also things you can do for them, and now you have control over them, and then you can tell them to do other things for whatever nature. I mean, you may actually be able to lend them to somebody else for money and say, well, let's assume for a moment, just hypothetical, that this Diddy guy, he told somebody else, oh, by the way, if you need some endorsements by celebrities, if you need some traction for whatever you're trying to do, I can get you those celebrities. I can make them appear at your doorstep and join your program or whatever. So this is like a bigger thing. Now, just before the
Now, there was
election,
one of these parties. They're saying that Kamala Harris was at one of them.
really? Oh boy.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
boy.
one of the stories that's been circulating. Of
Well,
course,
like,
not that she did anything at any of the party. That nobody's saying that. I mean,
yeah, but I
maybe
mean, it's
some of
like,
the parties something happened at. I don't know.
we'll see. We'll see what comes out of this. Now, of course, when it's right before the election, we see stuff being released. These October surprises, people called them. I mean, there was another one coming from. What was it? The Daily Beast, right? So the Daily Beast is a leftist publication that almost nobody reads, I think, because, I mean, over the last maybe 10 years, I've probably read a handful of Daily Beast stories, because almost I think they lack really exclusive content of any kind. But now they got material by or from Michael Wolff, who's written about Trump before. And so these are tapes of Jeffrey
He's
Epstein.
terrible. He's just like a Hollywood gossip type writer
So
who started writing about Trump back, several years ago.
so now there's these Jeffrey Epstein tapes where Epstein is talking trash about Trump because they had a falling out at some point, and And so I'm looking through this stuff, and I'm failing to find the sensation really. And then there's pictures of Donald Trump with topless young women, and no real other information besides that. So it's like, what does that tell us? What is that? They're releasing this now in the hopes of maybe tipping the scale a little bit and making Kamala win. But yeah, I mean, there's
And
nothing.
who knows if the pictures are authentic? I mean, if they had pictures like that, why didn't they use them in 2016 or 2020?
Sure.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and also there's like, now you get all these people coming out trying to present sensations. Now you got Candace Owens. She was at so this is Kamala Harris. This was an exclusive on the Alex Jones show. Alex Jones Live. This was the Alex Jones Live show. So they have Candace Owens on, and she talks about an exclusive story. It says Kamala Harris has all the hallmarks of a CIA mind control slave and is potentially a real-world Manchurian candidate. So basically,
Kamala Harris is a CIA mind controlled slave.
Satanic programming. They just have to say words to her, and then they can like hypnotize her and tell her what to do, and she's like a robot. Because, yeah, I understand. I mean, I read all the public stuff on the MK Ultra program. I read all the public stuff on some other
That's so old, that
research.
MK Ultra stuff.
Yeah, and also
that was going on when I was a toddler.
Yeah, yeah, and also I also read about the Soviet program, which was fantastically huge, right?
Much more sophisticated than anything we did.
But when did you ever hear solid information about the Soviet program that goes on to this day, of course? When did you hear about the Soviet program from these conspiracy influencers? I can't recall these influencers.
And when have they talked about Soviet mind control weapons?
Yeah, exactly.
When have they actually talked about that? I mean, the KGB had mind control weapons. I have a manuscript from Joe Douglas that talks about these weapons, and they're real. They have mind altering drugs that they can give to people to cause them to become suicidal, to cause them to self-destruct, to cause them to love Mother Russia, right? They've got all these drugs they can slip to people to cause all kinds of effects in people's brains, and nobody ever talks about the Russians doing this to people. It's always the CIA.
Yeah, so I have a problem with, people like Candace Owens, people like Candace Owens gaining power through this very old conspiracy stuff that's been around for a long time. Because now, if Trump wins, then Candace Owens can say, I played a part in that. I helped Trump a little bit to win. Or Alex Jones can say, I helped Trump win. I mobilized people, and it was a close race. I am that powerful. I am that important. I helped him win. Tucker Carlson can say.
It's such a shame that Candace Owens kind of blew herself up because, she was brave and bold and she said interesting things. And then she just took this turn to the I don't know, the conspiratorial right.
Yeah.
And she, saying that the French president's wife is a man.
Yeah,
it's like we discussed that before.
It's the easiest way.
It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, but it's the easiest way to gain power as an influencer. If you play to that conspiracy crowd, it's the fastest way to get traction. It's the fastest way to grow your audience. Tucker Carlson's done it. He didn't. Tucker Carlson never really liked Alex Jones, and Jones really didn't like Carlson in the past. And it's like
and
all
now
these
they're buddies. They're just buddies.
And also, Joe Rogan, who's also very powerful. Rogan, he knew Alex Jones a long time ago when Jones was, in the 2000s when Jones was not yet pro-Russia, and Jones was, his program was vastly different than it is today. And so that's when they were kind of hanging out a bit and they were buddies. But Rogan would not let Jones on his show for a very long time, but at some point that actually happened, and also Rogan, who always said he's a leftist, he's a socialist, he wants kind of communism and this would work for everybody. Rogan said he always voted left. He has always voted left. That's what he said a few years ago, I think. And so now Rogan is becoming powerful because now he's got these young men listening to him, and he tells them, sure, fair enough. The left is now the left wants to dominate everybody. The left is trying to run everybody's lives. But ultimately, it's kind of, I see it this way. Rogan has a problem with authority because he didn't have a good experience with authority, right? Which is very subjective. It's very like he's trying to take his experience and then generalize it and think he thinks it applies to everyone.
Embedded in our media, in the American media. I mean, it goes down through theater training, and I've been told by one of my readers that this is a thing that's come in through the theater. The left has brought these themes where it's the wisecracking, pot-smoking rebel who is, they've got on Apple TV, they've got this cop show about pot. All the leading characters smoke pot, and they all give the finger to their boss, and they're all wisecracking all the time, and they are all breaking the rules all the time. And this is what our media has been pushing on us for decades now. Oh, it's fine that they it's a police officer who goes around with criminals and smokes pot and breaks the law and does breaking and entering, and it's like, well, wait a minute, what about respect for rule of law from a police officer? And this is being modeled for us in our entertainment.
And it's like, I mean, it seems helpful, of course. Recently Joe Rogan had Trump on, and many people who were kind of undecided, they had a very positive reaction to that appearance on that Trump appearance on Rogan.
Did magnificently.
Yeah, because it was finally, you were getting relaxed, long-form content. It was not a speech. It was not a television bit. It was not something seemed so packaged and soundbitey. It was just a conversation. It was long-form content, and it had a many people really liked it. And then shortly thereafter, Vance was on. JD Vance was on, and he kind of did the same thing. I didn't see
that. I saw the Trump thing all the way through, but I didn't see Vance. Did Vance do good?
It was kind of in the same vein, really. It was kind of the same long form, relaxed content.
It was a fun conversation that Trump had with Rogan. It was fascinating, and Rogan was very kind to Trump. Trump was very kind to Rogan, and Rogan was frankly much more sympathetic to Trump than I would have ever imagined.
Yeah,
it was remarkable, and Trump did very well.
I just wonder what the future holds, because if Rogan gains all that power, what is he gonna say when Trump actually wins? And then there's 4 years of Republican administration, and then there's another 4 years of Republican administration, and maybe there's.
We have to realize that there is a left that is not under control of the Russians and the Chinese. There's a naturally American left that we have to, just like the American right, it's part of the country, and we have to get along. We have to try to like each other and work together and make the country work, because what are we going to do? Have a civil war and kill each other? We can't do that. That's not something we want. The Russians and Chinese want it, and the communist fanatics or the far right fanatics who want to be able to get at people and kill people, they want that. We've got to hope that never happens, because that's what the bad guys really want. We want to be able to regenerate our country. In the United States, we'd like to see that happen in Europe and other countries. We'd like to see it happen in Latin America, where people in Brazil now are free, and not people that I know get thrown in jail there, or they're trying to extradite Brazilian friends of mine here in the United States, and on really bogus charges. because they want to jail them, because they want to silence them. We have to realize if we have a right that's tolerant and a left that's tolerant, and nobody wants to fight a war and we want to debate everything out and talk, that's fine. It's when you've got this active subversion and this unrestricted warfare and this allegiance to foreign powers that want to destroy us. That's when it is completely unacceptable. And so we're getting near the end of our time. I wonder, given what you've seen, do you think Trump's going to win on Tuesday?
I think it's gonna take many weeks for a proper result because this time everybody's gonna be. I think people are gonna be way more prepared than last time, and I think some people actually learned from the mistakes that were made last time because there was some sensation-seeking, people who made a lot of
Oh,
claims.
yes. A lot of
And
bottom
it was
feeders and
a lot of
grifters trying to,
a
yeah.
lot of false claims, and that just destroyed more credibility, and that harms conservatives in the long run. But I think that many people have learned from that, and so it's gonna take a while to get something close to a certifiable result. Because if it's 10,000 votes here that make a difference, or 20,000 over there and 30,000 over there could be a legal battle for, down to the last possible vote, right? I mean, in these key states, and then there's and these lawsuits may take time. So I think it's going to be weeks or months even until we get a certifiable result.
I'm of two minds. Either the communists and their allies here in the United States and the corrupt officials and groups, either they have it so wired that Kamala Harris is going to win handily, and we're not going to ever know the numbers, and there's going to be no way to challenge it. Either that's going to happen, or Trump's going to win, because they didn't put in the organization, they didn't have the enthusiasm, and she's not very popular. I don't think she is, and so it's. I think it's going to be one or the other. I think Trump's going to win, or she's going to the system of cheating is going to be so good because there's no way in an honest election she can win. I think she's at least 5 points behind. I think her lead is going to erode further as we election day approaches. I just don't think that many people, and the left has not been that enthusiastic. The leftist organizations, and the money hasn't been quite the same as it was for Biden, or even for Hillary Clinton for that matter. She is a low-grade Hillary Clinton, not as prepared, not as
And she could go on.
sharp.
Yeah, she could go. I mean, I think there's still a standing invitation by Joe Rogan, and
She better not take it because she'll just
yeah,
be
yeah,
she'll be destroyed by it.
yeah. I mean, especially if she gets offered some premium wine by Mr. Rogan, right? I mean, we know Trump legitimately does not drink alcohol. But with Kamala,
Well, they say behind the
like,
scenes, I've heard it from a number of sources that she likes to drink.
oh yeah,
That's what I've heard.
I almost always hear a slur, a concerning slur. That's not just her being tired or overworked. It's
The
a
cackling,
distinctive.
you mean? Yeah.
That's when it's at a higher degree. I think that's when you suddenly think, okay, if I was a police officer and I stop her car because she's driving funny, and I talk to her and she speaks like this, I would be seriously concerned. But that's just my opinion. But sometimes it's way more pronounced. But sometimes she's trying to hide it, I think, and but it just comes out every once in a while, and you hear it, and it's there very, very often. And it's like, can she even have a 2-hour, 3-hour long form conversation? Can she present herself as a human being and talk to Rogan for 3 hours? I don't think she could.
No, because she's got nothing but stale stock phrases, and she never answers a question. She just launches into whatever. She ignores the question and launches into whatever she wants to say, which is always to say something nasty about Trump. So no, I don't think she's capable. Like I said, either they have been busy perfecting the mode of stealing elections so that it's so darn crooked it's like Venezuela, and nobody knows anywhere near the real numbers, and it's like you're talking 20, 30 million votes changing hands, depending, and it just becomes ridiculous. Or it's not it's not effective because Trump has got so many people behind him. It's hard to believe, looking at the numbers of people that are voting for Trump and that are like Trump. Hispanic voters, black male voters, uh, men in particular, even women coming over to Trump. People want a better economy. The economy's in the toilet. The inflation is scaring people. Even wealthy people who were supporting leftist candidates are scared by this economy, and they're afraid that Harris will basically run the economy into the ground. And I think that's probably true. I think if she is elected, we won't get through her term without a catastrophe. That's my prediction. But, never make predictions, especially about the future. Certain things we can see coming. But this election, boy, you just don't know because the polls can't be trusted and the election system can't be trusted. So
we'll see how that goes.
we'll see how it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like
So any
yeah,
last comments? Any last comments? Anything?
yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, maybe next time we'll talk about the training that's now happening with the United States Armed Forces. They're training for the jungle warfare of the future. They're getting ready for a big battle in Asia. And it's really getting serious. I mean, you cannot hide it anymore, and you cannot hide behind your naive thoughts anymore. It's really getting serious. So there's a lot happening. There's a lot going on. Poland is now fortifying its border. They're spending billions, literal billions, and trying to fortify their border to protect against not just Russians, but also North Koreans coming in. I mean, can people imagine North Korean soldiers in Poland next to Germany coming up to our doorstep? I mean, it's getting that insane. And the Democrats, they talk tough. I mean, the Democrats they talk tough when about Russia for a while, but they didn't really do much. And the Trump admin was actually very, very tough in its foreign policy, but they kept sort of a diplomatic, nice sounding door open. But once the Russians if the Russians get rid of Putin, if they actually start changing a bit, if they're retreating, there's going to be a tough deal. It's not going to be an easy deal for them. So this is kind of something that people need to remember before the election of what actually happened. And you heard today what the CIA was ordered to do to save Venezuela. But people at the CIA said, nah, we can't do this, we can't do that, it's not happening, I'm sorry, we can't really be of any service to you or the country. That's why this is so important, understanding these dynamics and the intelligence game. And this is how you make decisions about candidates to support and how to spread information. Don't just share anything because it's popular. Because these people, these communists, they know that you get drawn to somebody who seems successful. If it's a Hazaldin or whatever, and they say they're the new thing, and they're powerful, and you want to be part of that powerful, cool group. Finally, you get to be in a power group. They know how you function, so you have to understand how you function yourself and how you can function better. I think this is something that is absolutely
people
key.
need to know more, and they need to respect people who actually figured things out, which is hard. So anyway, I want to thank our listeners for joining us. I'm Jeff Nyquist. This has been Friends and Enemies. My co-host Alex Benesch and I. We want to wish everybody a good election week next week. Let's cross our fingers and hope that there's a clean outcome. And we'll be with you next week at this time to discuss the aftermath.